a lot of other issues, and my central issue is how do you rebuild the middle class, and how do we get out of these forever wars?
How do you get out of the Ukraine war?
The Ukraine war is easy to get out of. I mean, the Russians have been wanting to settle that war from the beginning.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the Minsk Accords was a settlement, and that was, that we basically, encouraged Zelensky. As Zelensky ran in 2019, here's a guy who's a comedian and and an actor, which I'm not saying in a disparaging way, but he's
probably should.
My wife is those things too.
Yeah.
So, but so how did he win with 70% of the vote? He won because he ran on a peace platform, promising to sign the Minsk Accords, which was an agreement that Russia, France, and Germany had all agreed to, which would have left Donbass as part of Ukraine as an autonomous region, so they can now enjoy their own language, the ethnic Russians, and protect themselves from attack by the central government, which was U.S. Installed central government, and that NATO would stay out of the Ukraine, and that's what the Russians wanted. A pledge that NATO will never go in, which we should have made for them. We have no business putting NATO in the Ukraine. We promised we'd never do that. We committed to it. And we've repeatedly violated those promises, and there's people in the White House who want this war, and they've said it repeatedly. Even President Biden has said the purpose of the war is to depose Vladimir Putin.
And what, install a puppet government?
Well, that's the thing. The same people who got rid of Saddam Hussein cost us $8 trillion. And Iraq is now worse off than we found it. We killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein. We forced Iraq into this bondage to Iran, where they're now a proxy state of Iran. We've reduced that nation into this incoherent mess that is just a battle between Shia and Sunni despots. We created ISIS. We then had to do the Syrian war, the Yemen war, the Afghan, Pakistan. We drove 2 million refugees into Europe and destabilized every democracy in Europe for the next 2 generations and created Brexit. That's what we got for that $8 trillion and the ravaged middle class in our country. The same people who we thought, the neocons who ran that operation, lied to us about weapons of mass destruction, tricked us into that war, and who we thought were now out of government forever, pariahs, in disgrace. They're now all back in the Biden administration with a new project. And, Lloyd Austin, who's Biden's defense secretary, said the purpose of the war for us is to exhaust Russia and degrade its capacity to fight any place in the world. Well, that's not good for the Ukraine, because the way we're exhausting Russia is by butchering 350,000 Ukrainian kids. I mean, we have turned that nation into an abattoir of death for the flower of Ukrainian youth. In a geopolitical, and I'm not excusing Putin. Putin is a thug, a monster, a gangster who illegally invaded and didn't need to. We need to take responsibility for the provocations which we have, which these neocons have been provoking for over a decade. And by the way, the reason we're in that war is because Americans are good people. And, we were convinced, granted, we're using these kind of comic book depictions, that they're now, the military-industrial complex is now expert at selling from us this kind of good versus evil, this whole thing that gets us into these wars. And keep, that war is a money laundering racket for the military contractors. The money is going there and coming right back, and then they all go on CNN, the generals, et cetera, who, if you look at their resumes, they're all working for General Dynamics and the military contractors, and they tell us we need to be in this war and tell us horror stories, et cetera. But we're there because Americans are good people, and they have compassion, and they want to redress a wrong. And by the way, my son went over there and fought.
Yeah,
and he joined, he without telling us, he left law school and a summer job, and he went over there and joined the Foreign Legion and fought as a machine gunner for a special forces unit during the Kharkiv offensive. So, the Ukrainian people, the valor of those people, and the anguish that they're suffering is beyond any description. But we need to look at our role in it, and we need to look for roads to peace. And not try to end the killing. There's 30 to 80,000 Russians kids who have died there too, and we shouldn't be exulting over that. We should be trying to find a settlement. The U.S. should be the grown-up in the room that's saying, how do we stop the bloodshed? That's what we should be doing over there, and not to achieve these. And I'll just say one other thing, Joe. That war's cost us $113 billion. That's the commitment so far. CDC's entire budget is $12 billion a year. FDA or EPA's entire budget is about $12 billion. We have 57% of our people in this country cannot put their hands on $1,000 to, if they need to, if there's an emergency. 25% of Americans are hungry now.